Hi everyone, this is Dragon GGY, sorry for being late. This is the operator Hindsight for Ascalon. Ascalon's kit is relatively straightforward compared to the ones we got before and ahead of her. Anyway, let's get started. Ascalon is a 6-star ambusher in the specialist class. Trait of the archetype, deals damage to all targets within range. That's true AoE damage, has a 50% art and physical dodge chance, a nice survival property, and is less likely to be targeted, which means a taunt level of -1. Looking at the stats, you can notice that they do not have very high HP, only at around 1.9k. In fact, if you don't take the dodge into consideration, their max HP and defense stat line is amongst the squishiest melee archetype in the game, more or less like standard bearers or executors. But they do have a decent resistance of 30. They also have the longest attack interval in the game at 3.5 seconds. Of course, we have to talk about their block zero nature. It does match their impression of assassins that hides in the dark instead of dueling enemies down. However, unlike liberators and standard bearers under their specific circumstances where their block is set to 0, ambushers simply have 0 block, which means that block counts can be added to them by various means to make them block. So what does this archetype brings to the table? From previous members, as well as Ascalon, we can conclude that Ambusher is an archetype that focuses on providing crowd control, while having some degree of self-sustain or survival tool. From the table here, you can see different ambushers have one or more specializations out of those elements. However, when we talk of damage, they don't immediately strike people as powerful damage dealers, especially when compared to the options we have at the time of their release. And honestly, that observation sort of continues with Ascalon. Talent 1 attacks inflict the following effect on enemies: movement speed reduced by 18%, takes 10% of Ascalon's current attack as arch damage per second for 25 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So the stacking behavior is quite similar to Aya Alter Talent 1. Every attack will give a new stack if it isn't already at max, and refreshes the duration of effects. Stacking the art DOT doesn't make it take 3 times per second, but simply increasing the damage to 30% of attack per second, so that's consistent with similar DOT behaviors. What's kinda new though is that the movement speed reduction stacks additively in this talent, so that's 18 to 36 to 54% ramping up, and that's more impactful than multiplying. Do note that this movement speed debuff will then proceed to stack multiplicatively with the ones in the module base effect as well as her skill 2. All effects are also removed upon Ascalon leaving the field. This talent basically defines Ascalon. She's an ambusher revolving around consistent movement speed reduction and some art DOT, kinda like an upgraded combination of Ethan and Manticore for analogy. To be honest, in Arknights, movement speed reduction isn't very noticeable until past like 30%, and Ascalon gets to start with at least 54%. Goes up to 81.6% in skill 2, and with module base effect, those numbers goes up to 63.2% and 85.3% respectively. It's a very powerful AoE crowd control from a melee unit, and can stack with similar kits like Manticore skill 1 or Innis's Shadow Sentry to mimic that similar Zavalodor moment like Mustima skill 3. For the arts DOT, it isn't the most prominent damage talent, but AoE DOT has its applications, for example dealing with all the damage instance related gimmicks or enemies. You can also combo it with kits that benefit from DOT more, like Virtuosa skill 2 or a sneak peek of what's coming next, Logos' talent. Talent 2 attack speed plus 8 or plus 10 with potential 5, gets additionally 6 more attack speed when adjacent to a ranged tile. This talent is pretty simple. Quality of life news for you, the determination of a ranged tile is quite forgiving. Regardless of deployable or not, it only has to be a terrain that's considered range, including some of the cosmetic boundaries of the map. Simply speaking, if you think it looks like a ranged tile, it probably is. The talent is determined on deployment, although this really only happens in RA. If you deploy her next to an artificial range tile and it's removed afterwards, she still maintains the attack speed, and vice versa. With this attack speed buff, Ascalon can shorten her attack interval from 3.5 seconds to a minimum of 3.16 seconds or 3.03 seconds being next to a range tile. A respectable extra stat since you want her to stack up that DOT and speed reduction faster. It just seems a little bit blatant, but okay. Ascalon releases with her module, the Ambusher X module. Trade update, enemies in range gets a 20% movement speed reduction. Upgrades go to her Talent 1, increasing the art's DOT per stack from 10% to, well, 11%. Duration of the debuff from 25 seconds to 30 seconds. Now, this is a questionable module. The base effect is good, don't get me wrong, it's integral to maximizing her movement speed reduction to get these numbers we just mentioned. But comparing the attributes, Mizuki gets 90 and 70 attack stats with his two modules, while this one only gives 53 to Ascalon. Not very offensive oriented. And the upgrades are marginal buffs that are not on point at all. Level 2 for 1% more arts DOT may be up for consideration, but the longer duration is just inconsequential. Most of the time, enemies are either dead in her range, where the duration just refreshes on every attack, or they are dead before the original 25-second duration. So overall, the module strengthens Ascalon's key power with the base effect, but leaves upgrades are completely optional and honestly not really worth it. Level 1 is recommended for anyone using her. About the skills, my recommendation is skill 2 over skill 1 over skill 3. I no longer put up that mastery 3 text because I think you can just go ahead and do mastery for any skills unless I really recommend against it, which then I will point out. This is more of an overview of pick popularity out of all three. For Ascalon, it's skill 2 and it's not even close. Skill 2 provides the highest movement speed reduction, has insanely good cycling, and surprisingly is also the best damage skill in her kit, which leaves the other two skills in a somewhat awkward position. Skill 1 is decent for AFK, skill 3 has some on-paper advantages, but haven't really found practical applications. Skill 1, the attack of the next attack increases to 210% and attacks twice. Can store 3 charges. This is a 4/7 auto skill. The stats are as follows. Cycle DPS is around 1027 with 332.3 being Arts DOT. Now, this is definitely a qualified AFK skill, but if you are familiar with the AFK skill reservoir, you'll probably know that Mizuki's skill 1 is also a decent one. So, let's do a little comparison. Obviously, they are both true AoE with some art damage. For Mizuki, he's got a much higher DPH of 3.6k physical and about 2.2k arts, which Ascalon doesn't have due to her skill 1 being double hits instead of a higher scale. Naturally, Mizuki will be better against high defense enemies. Ascalon, on the other hand, has a faster attack speed and movement speed reduction to ensure more time for dealing damage. The double hit design makes sense on her as it quickly applies 2 stacks of Talent 1 to her target. The Arts DOT also serve as a countermeasure, like we just said, to damage instance test. Overall, no definitive answer as to which one is better. It's still a decent AFK skill that can serve as a good support at the same time. If you want an AFK skill that comes with AoE crowd control, haven't built Mizuki, I'd say it's worth the consideration. Skill 2 attack plus 130%, movement speed of all enemies in range minus 60%, and will inflict 1 stack of Talent 1 effect on all ground enemies within a 1.3 tile radius when a ground enemy is defeated. This is a 15/20 35-second skill. The in-game description of this skill is ridiculously flawed. The speed reduction field applies to all enemies in range, including aerial ones, but the effect on kill only triggers with ground enemies and only affects ground enemies. Stats are as follows. This is the skill with the highest DPH and DPS in Ascalon's kit. Breaking it down, it has a top tier skill cycling with fast startup at 5 SP, a short cycle of 20 SP while having a 35-second duration. You can basically hella drop to drastically slow the enemy. One trick, using the skill will reset Ascalon's auto attacks, so you can quickly activate it after an attack to gain 2 stacks of Talent 1. It comes with a super high coverage, 20-second downtime is even shorter than the duration of her Talent 1. This is the skill that makes Ascalon the strongest and most consistent melee option for movement speed reduction. The field doesn't need her attacks to apply, although unlike Mostima skill 3 and Shu skill 3, it doesn't target invis and invincible enemies. It's not the 99% slow from Mostima, but 85.3% is enough to storm most enemies in range for the full duration, or for damage dealers to finish them off. This is extremely oppressive against slow-moving enemies, preferably melee. To give you a perspective, most elite enemies have movement speed between 0.6 to 0.8, which is ranked B or lower in enemies' profile, and it's very close to the minimum movement speed in game, 0.1, after being slowed by Ascalon. 0.1 movement speed in Arknights means that it takes 20 seconds to travel one tile. So I wasn't joking around when I said enemies are either killed or don't get out within skill 2. Last but not least, such slow is a perfect buffer between key skill downtimes to make the cycle much more forgiving. As for the damage side of things, yes, its 1.5k DPS is not the best. The almost 1-to-1 physical to art damage composition means that it gets handicapped by both defense and resistance. But hey, this is the best we've got for her. So overall, skill 2 is the indisputable priority skill for Ascalon. It's almost like a skill 3, but a skill 2. Skill 3, attack range expands, the exact same as Mitsuki's skill 3. Attack plus 50%, attack interval minus 1.5 seconds into 2 seconds, reduces physical and art accuracy of ground enemies in range by 50%, more likely to be attacked by enemies, so that's taunt level plus 2, and recovers 8% of max HP when enemy attacks miss or upon a successful dodge. This is a 45/45 long duration skill. Stats are as followed: 1.5k DPH, 1.3k DPS, each heal instance is about 180 HP, and the shortened attack interval further benefits from the attack speed increase for a shortest interval at 1.73 seconds. We talked about accuracy last time with Ella skill 1, so let's strike it while it's hot and quickly revise the mechanism. Accuracy is determined on the attacking end, while dodge is determined on the receiving end. Accuracy debuff applies to all damage instances in one attack action, while dodge is determined on every damage instance. Here are some additional bullet points about the mechanism. Damage without a specified source cannot miss. Enemy missing due to accuracy debuffs does not trigger the dodge-related relics in IS. Different accuracy debuffs are stacked multiplicatively, and Ascalon is able to heal off both enemy missing or herself dodging. Overall, effectively, she has a 75% chance to not take damage and heal. Now, this is the only skill that provides Ascalon with some self-sustain. Each heal heals about 180 HP. Because it's max HP percentage based, it changes in buff or debuff game modes. Theoretically, the faster the enemy attacks, the higher the healing she gets. For taunt level, it changes her taunt from -1 to +1, same as Winnar, Penance in skill 3, etc. Don't forget that it's still affected by deployment order when you use her alongside those operators. If you want Ascalon to tank damage from Winnar, you have to deploy Ascalon after him. With that said, I'm gonna break down the key problem with this skill, aka why having Ambusher take aggro and survive mostly on RNG is not a very practical idea. We mentioned earlier, ambushers are squishies by the melee operator standard. Yes, they can tank some arts damage with the good 30 resistance, but we are talking about 1.9k HP versus those operators with 4k plus. Therefore, increasing taunt and hoping to survive by dodging damage is not as reliable as there is less room for error. You can get one shot by high DPH. It's even less realistic if you expect her to sustain herself just from dodging. It works against mobs, but for mobs, I would pick the other two skills. This is not even mentioning the long downtime, so no way it's self-sustainable all the way. That leaves this skill with rather limited applications. It is an AoE accuracy debuff. It's a little similar to how Nightingale's skill 3 will protect you, but unlike providing dodge, accuracy debuff doesn't affect enemies out of the range, where with dodge, if you're in range, it's all up to you dodging, not where the damage is coming from. So really, accuracy or dodge, they have their respective pros and cons. The skill also applies her talent 1, most importantly the movement speed reduction in a bigger range with a faster build up. Unfortunately, it's still lacking in damage, 1.3k DPS. That was the DPS level of Mizuki's skill 3. Definitely not what we would call a optimal damage skill in 2024. So, is that okay? Yes, of course, because overall Ascalon is still a support-based unit. She has two main jobs. Number one, providing consistent movement speed reduction, and she does that fantastically. She's certainly the best at this job as a melee unit. Number two, consistent, easy to apply, AoE Arts DOT. Just recall the enemies from Invitation to Wine. You used Thorns, Blue Poison, Ethan, Ross Mantis. Now, Ascalon is your new best option. As a side dish, her damage certainly not great, but surely respectable still. For performance in future events, first up is RA. It's like the playground for Ascalon. AoE nature versus the large number of enemies in the game mode is satisfying. The mode features a lot of stages with open field where you can manipulate pathing so you can find a choke point for packing them up with Ascalon. For the future Integrated Strategy 5, she's also a popular specialist pick, with many players making her a first pick or even start with her. Her skill 2 is available at E1. A large portion of the enemies are melee units, and she has more relics to work with, including a hand relic that helps with her Wiki Sling, her damage. She also found good performances in the next summer event, the 2B 5th anniversary for Global, where the gimmick requires damage instance-based solutions. To wrap up, Ascalon is a 6-star ambusher focused on slowing down enemies and applying long-lasting arts COT. She does her job exceptionally good, so good that she can grow into a QOL improvement for players who got used to using her. Her damage isn't outstanding, but as time goes on, players do realize that it's not a major drawback for the character's strength. My rating for her daily is 6. She bundles up enemies for your damage dealers to dispose of. Her damage is just fine dealing with grunts and mobs in daily. She has a good AFK skill, or if you are willing to click a couple more times, a high CC coverage skill with better damage. However, at the end of the day, her daily presence is mostly for QOL. It's not something unachievable with just lane holders or your busted damage dealers. And as enemy stats grow, she's gonna hit the wall on both defense and resistance. For advanced, however, I would go with an 8. Her role in stalling strategies is massive. It works with shifters, it works with other crowd controls, and can buy time for skills or redeployments. If her target is melee only, well, good luck getting out of her range. The 5 SP on skill 2 is crazy good and can save your day. But we do have to acknowledge that she's not the only option for stalling enemies. Consistency is an advantage, yes, but there's no defining advantages over the other options like Mostima, Suzanne, or Shu, who already have couple titles under their belts. Pool advices in short: if you definitely want what she can do, go for it. If you don't think it's immediately a need for you, you should immediately save for what is to come. Gameplay elements. Like we said last time, you use Ascalon, you know that she's QOL and rewarding. If you don't use Ascalon, you don't miss out much playing the game. My biggest thoughts after 6 months with her is that she really is a good buffer to have on the field. She buys you a lot of time. Another is that she really nullifies threats from those big head, hard-hitting but melee-only enemies. It takes them forever to get to you, where you can deal with them any way you want. But if you're fine with playing it closer, easy skip. For schedule and meta, she has performances in IS, especially IS5. She does good in RA, and I've been talking about buying time for skills, and two big names for that is Visidel and Logos, who's coming next. The three of them are among the first operators that players are banning themselves from for challenge when IS5 dropped. As for you naysayers, Ascalon will rerun after all, and you can also pick her up from the selector 6 months later if buying that is an option for you. And I have to say this for players who are low on resources, the upcoming Visidel and Logos banner is the most stacked limited banner in the history of Arknights. No cap. Ascalon is not bad in any way, it's just that they are way too good. They are era-leading damage dealers that changes the ecosystem of Arknights, and any sacrifice is worth it to pull in that one. That's basically it for Ascalon. Check out the 10 and 10 Visidel and 9 and 9 Logos here. It's gonna be a crazy month. In fact, I'll go straight to working on Visidel and Logos after this one. They are strong for sure, but they are also very well designed mechanically, and I can't wait to break it all down for you. As always, thank you for watching until the end. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support is what keeps me going. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.